if you haven't picked up on this yet, I'm an old dude. I have worn a lot of unique things all throughout time. I started earlier this week putting together photos that I had of me through the years, and I decided that wasn't pleasing to the Lord, and so I didn't share. I'm not going to share those with you. It's just. Because nothing makes you more excited than mocking me throughout an entire message. I understand. Who knows? Maybe we'll work on it. I'm sure you know some people who are related to me who'll be happy to give you photos of me looking stupid. But I lived through parachute pants. Do you guys know what parachute pants are? Did that. I also remember I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old when I went to school, Williams Magnet Elementary School, Little Rock, Arkansas, and me and Reggie got in trouble. We had to stay inside for recess because we wore red bandanas tied around our jeans. Like David Lee Roth, that was against the dress code, because you're looking at me, especially at 8 years old, absolutely a rebel. Like that's total, whatever, that's big stuff. I had a cowboy hat stage. Actually wrote this line just for you. Candidly, you look better than I ever did. So that's what I didn't try to look like this, man. I just came out. My phone is exploding in my pocket, which means I believe people are texting me photos of me that they have for me through the years wearing things. I'm not bringing it out. You know who you are. Me and fashion have never been friends. My problem is I do care what I look like. I just often care way too late to do anything about it. Like, I've got 5 minutes to leave the house. I'm like, I should look better. Or like, true story this year, Friday night before Easter weekend while we're setting up, I should have better Easter clothes. I should have something. It's a little late at that point. Part of my problem is I don't like to go look for stuff. I'm a buyer, not a looker. Does that make sense? There are some people who like to just to look. One of my kids, she just loves to go and look at stuff. She'll go to a store with no intention of spending any money whatsoever and just walk around. No, that's not shopping. Shopping requires purchasing. She's a looker. She just looks at stuff with no shopping intention. I want to go and I want to buy. How many of you are buyers? That's the problem. Hold on, that sermon's coming up. Every weekend for this month, Pastor Rod's talking about stewardship. Your third week, that's you. So, man, it's tough in this crowd tonight, isn't it? How many of you are lookers? You love just to walk around and look at stuff with no intention of purchasing. Gosh, there's always intention. Yeah. I just can't do that. Like, I don't have a problem buying it when it's time, but I just don't want to go walking around for no reason. If I want to buy it, I'm going to go in them on a mission. I want to purchase something. It is, isn't it interesting how our clothes make us feel? Not just like the fabric and how, but like there's something associated with what we wear and how we feel, how we think about ourselves. And let's just be up front. Nobody in this room ever does it, but some people judge others by what they wear. Ever shown up to an event and felt awkward because you aren't wearing what everyone else is wearing? Overdressed? You ever showed up overdressed? You're like, I misread this. Worse than that, when you show up underdressed. Couple months ago, I'm on this group of people, and there was this. I was the youngest person there, which tells you how old everybody else was. And they're interviewing an individual to become a missionary. Like they were interviewing her to become a missionary. She's meeting with all these people, and she goes in to meet with them, and she comes in, and man, she was awesome. I was absolutely fired up about her. Great stuff. But she looked like she was coming to Unite service. Like her jeans, there was less fabric than there was exposure on her left leg. It was all ripped out, which was great. It looked good, except for the fact it didn't match where she was. Like, she was there to impress them and say, yes, we trust you with, like going overseas and lots of money, but she dressed the wrong way, even though she was the right person. The way she looked didn't communicate what was really there. It was almost like it was potential. And you're like, well, those guys, those women, they shouldn't have judged her that way. You're right, they shouldn't have. But you know what they did? They did. You might say they didn't judge her, they just made decisions about her. My high school, and when I was in high school, my senior year, I was in student council. I was the student body president, I was like super important, really good. I won on my looks, and 3 of you got, anyway. So also on student government was this guy named Alan Leubner. I got to be careful because he teaches at Pulaski Tech, and some of you might know him. Alan and I were, yes. Huh? Yes. Yep. Yep. It happens every time I tell this story, those of you at PT, because he's a unique guy. Anyway, Alan and I did not get along. Alan was kind of a punk at this point. I was in senior. He was in 10th grade. He didn't really like me. He was also on student council. So I was the only person who played football on our student government team. We had this big meeting event thing that we were going to do. And so they scheduled the meeting, and it was like football practice was over at 7, and the meeting started at 6. So I couldn't be there. I'm supposed to lead the meeting. Alan goes, I'll lead the meeting. I'm like, oh, whatever, fine, go whatever. So we're planning this deal, and he says, and the group says, you know what we should do? Let's make this fun. This is the first meeting of the year. We're going to eat. We're going to hang out. We're going to have a little bit of party. Let's do like a costume thing. Let's all dress up 1960s. So it was like everybody come dressed up, hang out, whatever fun. We said, great. I said, that's awesome. They met. They started the meeting. I finished football practice. I ran home, changed clothes, got dressed up, raided my parents' closet, got stuff to wear, came into the meeting with the entire student group and the principal from the school, walked in, and not a single person was dressed up. That's when I learned that after I'd left, Alan said, you know what would be funny? Is if Randy is the only one who shows up dressed up funny. Did I fight him? No. I could have and won, but I didn't. And yes, it had been a really long day, and you're laughing, and I'll just tell you at that point, I didn't laugh. I was genuinely hurt. They thought it was a joke, but I led an entire meeting dressed as if it was the 1960s, and I felt stupid. The truth was I wasn't stupid. Thank you. I wasn't awkward-ish, but my clothes and the setting made me feel worse than I really was. How you dress makes you feel differently. Every now and then, I get to speak on the weekend here at First Assembly. Pastor Rod gives me the chance to speak. When I do, I like to wear something new. Almost always, I buy a new shirt or a new tie or something. I like to wear something new in that moment. It's special. Why do I do it? Because I feel better when I do it. Sometimes when you buy something to make you feel better, though, when you get it and you get it home and you try it on, it just doesn't work. So, like, personally, I'm super glad the whole skinny jeans phase is going away. I couldn't pull off skinny jeans. I could never pull off that look. I mean, literally, if I ever got them on, I couldn't pull them off. Like, it never worked. I couldn't do it. One time, years ago, those of you who met me knew I was a little bigger, lost quite a bit of weight on a Wednesday night, or we did this group thing. I think Shelby Lee, you were here. We did a mall scavenger hunt, and I went into Forever, what is that place called? Forever 21. And the goal was, can they find a pair of pants that I would fit in? Those are some of the greatest photos in the history of time. I only bought 2 because they busted. So it was, we call this series Fit Check because it's, for whatever weird reason right now, it seems to be cool and popular to post your picture of what you're wearing online and ask people what they think. I think that is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. I'll just be up front with you. I'm going to speak to it myself. Here's why. Not because I think the thing is dumb, but I am so self-conscious, I would be scared to death what someone would say about what I'm wearing. I would be constantly looking at the comments and living and dying on whether you said you liked or didn't like what I was wearing. And that this conversation about others' approval and living for it is a dangerous, dangerous road. Because I don't know if you know this, but there's some weirdos out there. And there are weirdos who are mean. And there are people who live to make themselves feel better by busting on you. Just be careful. And in the conversation with a couple of you about why we do this, why you do this, why this is so important, the conversation about what you're wearing, and it has a little bit more to do tonight with what you're wearing. We're not talking about clothes. I'm not going to show you what you should and shouldn't wear to church, although that would be great. Anyway, it would be super helpful. We're going to let Abby Wade do that, not me. I don't want to do that. Abby, you get to do that. You get to teach on what you should, because I'm not anyway. That'd be a great night. Abby Wade and Daniel Autry teaching on what you should wear to church. You know what, Daniel? Aren't you speaking next week? Nope. Yeah, I think you and Abby should meet up and discuss a clothing guide. Anyway, so we're not talking about what you wear to church. What we are talking about over the course of these few weeks is how you are presenting to the world around you by what you are clothed in. Not whether you're wearing clothes from Forever 21 or Dillard's, but what do people really see, and what decisions do they make about you and the God you serve when they observe you? Do people know what you value, and do they know what's important to you when they spend time with you? If you hang out with Pastor Tyler, it won't take you long to know that he loves basketball and he loves the Dallas Mavericks, because he talks about them all the time. He named his kid Maverick. That's what happens. If you spend time with Aaron Stone, just know he's going to talk about photography or video stuff or climbing rocks in the desert. That's what he loves to do. That's what he's going to talk about. The question is, if people spend time with you, significant amount of time, what do they say about you? What do they say you believe? What do you think about stuff? What decisions are they coming to about you? Especially when it comes to your values and beliefs. The Bible talks a lot about this. It talks a lot about this kinds of things in regards to what we wear and what the clothing. Kind of a marquee verse, Romans chapter 13, verse 14 is kind of like a theme verse for this whole week. It says, "Rather, clothe yourself with the Lord Jesus and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the sinful nature." Paul said, clothe yourself in Jesus, which means we have to ask the question, what does it look like when someone is wearing Jesus? What kind of fashion statement do they make? When you're at school, are you wearing Jesus? When you're at work, are you wearing Jesus? When you're on a date in a relationship with someone, are you clothed in the Lord Jesus Christ? When you're in class, when you are, wherever you are, what is the thing you are presenting? What you're wearing is one of the very first things people use to evaluate you. People make decisions about you based on what you wear. That might not be a good thing to you, but it's true. You send messages with what you want to wear. So if you show up wearing a sports jersey, everybody knows, for the most part, you like these people, this team. Some of you choose clothing for the opposite reason. You like to poke at everything else. You dress the opposite of trends because you like to be known as the rebel, which then identifies you as someone who actually falls into line with everybody else who's a rebel. You send a message. But like I said, some trends, some messages, some looks don't work. And tonight that's what I want to talk about real fast, is some looks that don't work for us as followers of Jesus Christ. The looks that send the wrong message and set you up for failure. Paul talks about this in Ephesians chapter 4. He says, with the Lord's authority, I say this: live no longer as the Gentiles do, for they are hopelessly confused. Their minds are full of darkness. They wander far from the life God gives them. They've closed their minds and hardened their hearts against him. They have no sense of shame. They live for lustful pleasure and eagerly practice every kind of impurity. Now, Paul in this section doesn't say anything specifically about clothing, but he does talk about putting things on, taking them off. And the imagery that he's using, obviously, is clothing. And that first verse that I read is super important. He says, live no longer as Gentiles do. Now, Gentiles, this is a term, it's like a catch-all phrase that Paul uses. Basically, in his world, there were two kinds of people, Jews and Gentiles. Jews were basically people who grew up in Israel, in that area. They were Jewish. And then there are Gentiles, people who were not Jewish. And so Ephesians, the people at Ephesus, for the most part, they are all Gentiles because they didn't grow up in Israel. For the most part, they are not Jews. So he says, don't live like the Gentiles, which is interesting because what were they? Gentiles. The Jews had grown up with God's word, with God's presence. They had grown up knowing what it meant to be. But Gentiles were out on their own and living their own thing and doing wild and crazy. They were Gentiles, and then they come to follow Jesus. Even though they'd not grown up, in our terminology, they hadn't grown up in church. They didn't know anybody who had been in church. They didn't know what was right from wrong. They'd lived their own way. And now he says, don't live like you used to live. Hey, Gentile, stop acting like a Gentile. Jesus had set them free, Paul says. Now it's time to live free. It's time to be different. So here's the first look that will mess you up as a follower of Jesus Christ. And it's this, it's the vintage look, where you just keep wearing the same old things. I don't want to overplay the metaphor, but know this: Jesus is not something you accessorize your life with. Jesus is not something that you just put on. When he comes into your life, it's out with the old and in with the new. You don't add a little bit of Jesus. Which means you're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to change. Stop living like the Gentiles. If Paul wrote to us today, what would he say? Would he say stop living like the alcoholic? Stop living like the drug user? Stop living like the person who can't control their sexuality? Stop living like the gossip? Stop living like the liar? I don't know. He would say whatever it was that indicated the thing that you had left. Whatever is in your past, leave it. And this is what happens. People who live this way, they make the mistake if they try to hold on to the past. They try to hold on to it. That's the mistake, is they want, like, hey, we want to look like I want to keep wearing the same old things. I love this thing. I love this sweatshirt. I love this part of my life. I want to hold on to it. I want to keep it. I want it to be mine. I don't want to give it up. Are you saying Jesus wants me to give up the thing that I love? What kind of Jesus is that? No, Jesus doesn't want you to give up the thing you love. Jesus wants you to give up the thing that is destroying you. And sometimes we fall in love with the very thing that hurts us. We become comfortable with the thing that damns us. And we're talking way more about this in a couple weeks. But it's time to let go of some stuff. Here's the second look that doesn't work. It's the faux fashion look. People who wear faux fashion, they play dress up instead of being transformed. That faith and spirituality is dress up. Now, most people like to do dress up stuff. There's something fun about pretending you are something you aren't. When you were kids, guys, you played soldier or whatever. Girls dressed up like princesses. A few weeks ago, we did that murder mystery thing. A whole bunch of you dressed up and acted as characters, and you were awesome at it. Some of you, and you know who you are, you dress up in sci-fi or anime characters and go and spend money to go to conventions. Awesome. Hey, Anthony, there's a whole industry, people making money. Why? Because people like to pretend. It's easier to spend a couple bucks and change the outside than ever to become anything on the inside. And when it comes to following Jesus, too many people like to pretend. They like to play dress up. Now, I don't want to confuse you, so let me unpack this a little bit. Whenever you do something new, you've got to make new changes. So I'm not very good at golf, but I like to play golf. When you go on the golf course, you have to look like you play golf or everyone makes fun of you. Now, they may not do it out loud, but I promise you they're doing it in their heads. So when you go to the golf course, you need golf clubs, obviously. Makes sense? You need golf shoes. You need golf clothes. You've got to wear certain kinds of clothes. So you have to buy those clothes. You got to have a golf outfit. Those things are incredibly expensive. And I know people who spend thousands of dollars on golf stuff. They show up the best dressed golf-looking people. I was playing golf last week. There was a guy who had a $400 pair of golf shoes. Okay? Here's the deal. You can be the best dressed golfer on the course, but you aren't a golfer until you hit the ball. In fact, I've run into some people who overcompensate for their lack of ability by trying to have the look. I've seen people make the same mistake when it comes to church. Because we got our own stuff. Like, if you hang around here long enough, you'll immediately know how to copy. Eden, come here real quick. Come here real fast. Eden, come here. All you got to do, just wear a First NLR sweatshirt. All right? Eden, I'm gonna see how well you can do this. When BJ, Bethany, all them are up there leaning there saying, "Give me Jesus," what are you supposed to do? Sing. Okay, what do you do with your hands? Okay, all right, well, let's practice. I'm going to set you up to succeed in church. Say, "Give me Jesus." Sing, "Jesus, give me Jesus." What are you supposed to do? Look at it. Y'all are the cool people now. Look at you. All right, go sit down. All right. Way to go, Eden. You just got to have the right clothes, raise your hands at the right time, say amen when I'm speaking at the right moment. Amen. Look at y'all. Y'all are the cool kids. Like, you can do all that stuff. You can learn culture and you can copy culture without ever being changed or transformed. And that's actually the shortcut for change. That's the shortcut for succeeding. In fact, I'll just use this image. It's not true, but you can work your way from the back of the room on your first time here all the way to the front of the room of the stage if you do the right stuff. If you do all the outside, if you dress up, you play the part. But you're just like a golfer who has all the stuff but can't hit the ball. It's fake. Shortcuts are easy. Anybody can fake it. Jesus is calling for deep transformation and change. I want you to worship. I want you to buy t-shirts, sweatshirts. I want you to embrace our culture. But our culture is not as important as Christ is. I want you to be transformed from the inside out, not the outside in. One of the worst things you can do is to look exactly like, well, me. Like, we don't replicate each other. We like what we do here, but what we do here is not as important as who you are in Jesus Christ. It's inside out change, not outside in. In Jesus' day, there was this group of people called the Pharisees. They were obsessed with looking right. They got all the right stuff right, except for the fact they were horrible on the inside. They would, like in today's culture, they would be the kings of social media fit check. Constantly posting, look how great we are. And Jesus walks up to him and says, "Yeah, you look great on the outside. You're like the best cemetery in the history of time. Flowers, everything clean, beautiful. Your outside is spectacular. It's like a statue, amazing. But you know what's inside you? Dead people. Dirty dead bones." John Ortberg calls this pseudo-transformation. It's fake transformation. I love this quote from Thoreau. I love Walden. It's one of my favorite books. But this part, when I read it for the first time years ago, it just really messed with me. Thoreau said this, "I say, be aware of all enterprises that require new clothes, and not rather a new wearer of clothes. If there is not a new man, how can the new clothes be made to fit? If you have any enterprise before you, try it in your old clothes. All men want not something to do with, but something to do, or rather, something to what? Be." Here's the deal. I want your outside changed, but Jesus wants your inside transformed. Don't just settle for culture. Some of you grew up in church. Some of you have been let down by people in church. And let me give you a secret. Some of the reason why you were let down was because people decided to do this. Some of the people let you down were pastors, spiritual leaders. Some of you, your parents did. Because you watched them on the weekend in their first NLR hoodies and their hands in the air. But you lived with them Tuesday through Friday. I guess Monday as well. I don't know why I said Tuesday, but Monday you're on your own. Every other day of the week. And you're like, you struggle with that because you're like, how could they be this and how could be that? And then more importantly, how could everyone else at church think that they were amazing? Because I live with them and you know what? They aren't amazing. And you've let that hold you back and you've let that stop you. Let me explain to you what was happening. I think in a lot of ways, obviously what they did was wrong and what they did was bad. It wasn't helpful. But there's a good chance what they did was they embraced acting like the culture of church rather than having the transformation of faith. I need you. Jesus needs you to have your faith in your life transformed, not just your external stuff. Because if not, Jesus is going to show up and walk in the room and say, spectacular tombs we've got here. Look at the tombstones in this room. Beautiful on the outside. They even cry during Give Me Jesus. But inside, dead. Fake faith. So why does someone do that? Here's one of the mistakes. I've observed it over and over and over again. It's this. When someone comes to Jesus, you're not careful, they'll try to deal with the consequences of sin instead of dealing with sin itself. You want to deal with the consequences of sin rather than dealing with sin itself. Let me explain what that means. When you get in trouble, you need to do what? Get out of trouble. What's the best place to get out of trouble? Come to church. Guess what Jesus does? Cleans you up and gets you out of trouble. If you have a problem, you want it solved, so you try and fix it. Consequences. And if you're not careful, you will chase fixing the consequences in your life rather than fixing the problem. Now, don't get me wrong. You need to deal with consequences. But here's a classic example. I won't tell you how many times in my journey as a pastor this has happened. Get a phone call. It's usually from a dude. He says, hey, can my wife and I come in? We need to have marriage counseling. I'm like, sure, I'd love to talk with you. Be happy to do it. He's like, no, we got to come now. Like, what do you mean you got to come now? Like, man, it's over. She's leaving. The marriage is over. We got to come now. And I go, like right now? I mean, like, yeah. Like, can you? An hour later, can you? I'm like, all right. Well, we'll figure what happened. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. We just want to talk to you. Well, then they get there. This crisis, which obviously didn't happen that day. It's been happening for weeks. Genuinely what happened is somebody got caught. For this purpose of this story, he got caught having an affair. And she says, if you don't fix this, I'm leaving you. So he wants to make her happy and keep her because he feels bad about it. So guess what he wants to do? Come meet with me because I can make all things good. Come to the counseling sessions, say what needs to be said, makes an exterior change. She takes him back. She embraces him. But guess what he doesn't do? He never deals with the thing that caused the problem to begin with. He doesn't change. So then, we're 1 year later, and guess what he does again? Because he dealt with the consequences rather than dealing with the actual issue. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of you, and it was consequences that drove you to church. Right? But if all you're doing is trying to heal and fix your consequence, just know you're delaying an inevitable fail. You got to deal with the thing, not just what the thing caused. Consequences of sin, yeah. But you got to deal with the sin itself. Here's a good question. Are you sorry you got caught? Or are you sorry you did it? Those are two very different things. Paul continued. But that isn't what you learned about Christ. Verse 21, since you have heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitude. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. Here's the next look that doesn't work. Call it the trendy look. That's where you change your style to whoever is around you. It's crazy how quickly we adapt to feel comfortable. Several years ago, it was a long time ago. It's probably 10 or 12 years ago. I came to church, came to young adult service, and all of a sudden a new fashion trend has hit. For guys love to wear these dress shirts that were like a little longer, and they folded over the cuff, and on the cuff there was this extra piece of fabric. It was really good. A couple of you may remember that. Most of you were like 3. But anyway, I walked in, I looked at 2 people who remain nameless and looked at them and thought, that looks stupid. I'm like, I thought it was dumb looking. I didn't even like it at all. But they kept wearing them. And suddenly I found myself at the store and I purchased one. You've done the same things. I changed what I liked based on the people around me. And if you change your preferences based on what you need to feel accepted. As a follower of Jesus Christ, you can't do that. I mean, do you always reflect him? I mean, it's pretty easy at church, but everywhere you go, do you reflect him? Do you change your style and your preferences when you're online late at night? When you're alone with your girlfriend? What about when you're at school with your friends? Do you use different language? Different kinds of words? Do you tell different kinds of jokes? Do you swear? Do you cuss and tell dirty jokes with the guys? But of course, you'd never do that at Unite. Do you dress and act modestly on the weekend at church, but on Saturday night, completely different ballgame? And when you do this, here's the mistake you're making. You've made the mistake of thinking that fitting in is more important than becoming like Jesus. So if you're not careful, at one point in the week, you're going to want to fit in with the Jesus crowd. But then you're going to be at work, so you're going to want to fit in the work crowd. And then you're going to fit in with your friend group. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being loved and accepted and wanting to be liked by people, but there's everything wrong with changing who you are all the time, because it's going to get discouraging really quick. Some of you are changing who you are so many times, you need an extra closet in your life for all the costumes that you keep putting on. And how in the world you keep track of who you're supposed to be at one moment, I have no idea. It's got to be absolutely terrifying that you're going to make the wrong statement or the wrong thing at the wrong place, the wrong time. Another look that doesn't work is the lazy look. This is when you expect change to just happen to you. I don't understand the pajama phenomenon with your generation. Sorry, y'all. Whoa. Pajamas are great when you're going to bed. Maybe the gym, maybe, no. I can't think of a time where I would just say, you know what, I'm going to go outside and go to the store in my pajamas. I know it used to just be Walmart, but it's not just Walmart anymore. Huh? Come on, bro, to the gas station? Waffle House? Did you say to Chili's? Apparently I've hit a nerve, and I completely misread this point of the message. Just know there's going to be a part 2 to this sermon on pajamas alone. But don't get me wrong, there are times to lay around the house in sweatshirts and be comfortable. But notice what Paul says. People screw up this. They screw up in 2 pendulums. I'm going to give you the 2 mistakes all at once and then kind of summarize and talk through it because they're on one side. On one side of the coin, lazy person says, I'm going to wait on God to change you, to change me. You're going to wait on God to change you. It's like, man, I'm just God, do something. I just change my heart. I know I shouldn't be with him, but change my heart towards him. God just hit me. I know I can't control my spending, so God, make me not want stuff anymore. God, just take it. How many times, some of you in this room have come, would you pray God takes this away from me? Right? On the other hand, the other side of the pendulum is this other mistake is where you rely on yourself to change you. One side says, God's got to do it all. And the other one says, man, I can do this. I can get this. I can think through this. I know what I'm doing. Did you notice what Paul said? Paul said, verse 22, throw off your sinful nature. That's you doing something. Verse 24, put on your new nature. But he also said, let the Spirit renew your thoughts. Let the Spirit change and transform you. You have to throw off your past and you have to put on your new. It's both things working together at once. You do your part. He does yours. You work and he moves. So how do we end this message tonight? Well, I've blasted you over and over and over again. Fair? So I'm not going to make you feel any more guilty. Here's what I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to not have fake faith. Not to chase trendy and not to settle for easy and simple stuff. Instead, go the extra step. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to Jesus. Have real faith, real transformation, not the fake stuff. God bless you. Have a great night.